Monday we started looking at solving equations that had distribution in them, so I wanted to create a little short video in case some of y'all need extra help tonight. It's just 3 quick problems, and I'm going to be talking about what we discussed in class. If you remember, the first type of problem that we looked at, and ignore this, just kind of hang with me right now. The first kind of problem we looked at was simple, and this was like from 7th grade. Okay, this is what I called family and friends. Then the next kind of problem we looked at was what happens if I have 2 x's on each side. And now what we're adding to this is what if I want to distribute also to my problem. Okay? So basically we talked about this being like if we're making a cake and we have different levels, how we bring it down. And just remember, your goal is to take a level right here and you're going to make this equation look like this one and then make this one look like this one. And then from there, we know how, as long as we get it in our 7th grade equation, then we know how to solve it. So let's go ahead and do the first one. And if you want, what you actually could do is you could pause the video and then just try working these 3 problems by yourself. And whenever you're ready, go ahead and press play, because then you can see if I worked it the same way that you did. So if you want to, go ahead and press pause and just press play whenever you're finished. Alright, I'm going to assume that you are now pressing play because you worked all 3 of your problems. So I'm going to go ahead and do the first one with you. Now, if you notice, this equation only wants you to distribute on this side of the equal sign. And we're going to distribute to both terms. So I would have 3 times x, which is 3x, 3 times negative 2, which is negative 6, and that should equal 4x plus 1. Then what we talked about in class is that I personally like to move over the smallest x. However, you do not have to do that. If you want to move over the 4x, you could, or even if you wanted to move over a number. But I find that students are less confused whenever they move over the smaller x. So instead of positive 3x, because remember this sign does not belong to the 3, it actually belongs to the 6. So instead of positive 3x, I'm going to minus 3x, subtract it from both sides. Now notice in class we talked about this. You don't just automatically simplify this term. You're going to want to write it from left to right in order to make sure you don't make any mistakes. So coming from the left, if you notice, this canceled, and write exactly what you see. Negative 6 equals, that would simplify to 1x plus 1. And then from here we're going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight my x. And we're going to, this is a normal 7th grade problem, and we want to get x isolated. Now remember we talked about friends and family. They're on the same side of the equation, but your friend is who is not attached to the x, and the family is. Your family always leaves last. So instead of adding 1, I'm going to move 1, because that's my friend. And I would have negative 7 equals 1x. And then from there, since that's multiplied to your x, then you divide, because you do opposite operations. And negative 7 divided by 1 is negative 7 equals x, or x equals negative 7. Now let's go back up to this spot right here where I put 1x. Remember, you don't technically have to put the 1x, but if it helps you to understand how to do these problems better, you can. But if you did not want to put the 1 because that's understood, you actually could have just written negative 6 equals x plus 1. And then from there, solve the problem. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and this time, I tell you what, I'm going to solve this equation one more time, but instead of moving over the smaller x, I'm going to move over the larger x. That way, if you worked it this way and you didn't get the same answer I did, then we can see where your mistake was. So first, go ahead and distribute again, equals 4x plus 1. And instead of moving over 3x, I'm actually going to move over 4. Now since 4 is positive, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Draw my line, then I'm going to write left to right. So 3 minus 4 is negative 1x minus 6 equals, that cancels, so positive 1. You don't have to put this positive 1 in front, it's just assumed. It's understood. Now if it said minus 1, then we put negative 1. Once again, I wouldn't have to write negative 1x. You could write negative x, but it's up to you, whatever you want. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to highlight my x, and then from here, I'm going to solve. And I would need to move over my 6 first. So since he subtracted, I'm going to add him. So I'll get negative 1x equals 7. And then from there, I can go ahead and just divide by negative 1. So x would equal negative 7. And if you look back at our first time we worked the problem, we got the same answer. Alrighty. So for my next two problems, I'm just still going to move over the smaller x because that's what we normally do in class. But just make sure you have the same answer. If not, look back in your work again to see maybe you forgot a sign or maybe you didn't bring down the right number. We're going to go ahead and distribute. This time, though, we have to distribute to this parentheses and to this parentheses. So I'm going to have 6x minus 42 equals 8x minus 72. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract. I like to move over my smallest x, so that's why I said minus 6x. That does not mean that you have to. Once again, notice I'm not figuring this guy out right here. No, I don't want to simplify first. I'm going to write from left to right to make sure we don't make any mistakes. So this would cancel. Bring down your negative 42. Once again, if this was plus, it's understood, but since it's a minus, we bring it down and we say it's negative 42. Bring down your equal. 8 minus 6 is 2x minus 72. Now that we have one x in our problem, we're back to family and friends. So we're going to go ahead and move over. And if you can easily see from this equation that 72 is your friend. So instead of minus 72, we're going to add 72 to both sides. Then I'll get 30 equals 2x. Then I just divide by 2 and I get x equals 15. Okay, ooh, went kind of crazy. Last problem. Once again, I have to distribute to both sides of my equations for this particular problem because there's two parentheses. So I'm going to have 20x plus 40 equals negative 6x, and negative 3 times positive 6 is a negative 18 or minus 18. Okay, I like to move over my smaller x, so add 6x to both sides. And then I'm going to get 26x. Oh, sorry, I forgot my line. Go left to right. So 26x plus 40. Bring down your equal sign. That canceled. Bring down your negative 18. Notice earlier I called this minus, but minus and negative essentially mean the same thing. So don't let that confuse you. Then once again, I want to get x by itself. So I need to minus 40 to both sides. Once again, don't just figure this out. Work it from left to right. So bring this down. This will cancel. Equals, and that'll be negative 58. And then we're going to go ahead and divide. So I'm going to divide both by 26. And if we wanted to, we could go ahead and reduce, and you can reduce these both by 2. And if you reduce them both by 2, on the bottom, 26 divided by 2 is 13. And by bottom, I mean denominator. And the numerator on top, it's going to be a negative number. And it's going to be 29. So this is my final answer. And you don't have to convert it to a mixed number. You can leave it as an improper fraction. I want to show you one more thing, and that's the PARCC website. So I can show you what kind of problems will be on your PARCC that are similar to this, and then what problem we're actually working up to when it comes to solving equations. This is the website that I gave you today for your parents if you wanted to go ahead and look at this particular PARCC test. And you would hit grade 8 EOY, which stands for end of year. Then it's going to take you to this screen. You can stay as a guest. You don't have to log in. I'm going to go ahead and say start now. Scroll down one more time. And notice this is the non-calculator part. So that means that we cannot use a calculator for these two types of equations. So start section. This is the first problem that they gave us. And this is just like, this is very similar to a problem that we just worked. And it just wants you to solve for x, enter your answer in the space provided, enter only your solution. So you're not even going to enter in x equals. You would just put in the solution or the answer, the number. So let's say I find that it's 2, then I'd put it in. Now, this will not be 2. In fact, if you want to go ahead and work it, go ahead and pause. But I'm going to tell you what the correct answer should be, and the correct answer should be 3.5. We worked this question in class, but it should be 3.5, okay? Or it's a fraction. I think it's 7/2. That's what you should get, and it should be positive, so make sure it's not negative. But notice this is not multiple choice. All this is just fill in the blank. And then if you wanted to scroll through the practice PARCC exam, this one is actually multiple choice, but some of these questions select all that apply. Select each correct answer. Then again, we're putting something in an answer box, so it's not just multiple choice. Okay. And this is our final question that PARCC has. And they had questions like this on the LEAP last year, so it's really not different. The only difference between PARCC and LEAP is that LEAP had multiple choice answers. Here you're just typing in what your answer is. Now, once again, please remember that this is what we are working up to. So we should be doing these by next week sometime. This is as difficult or as complicated as an equation can get. But it's very, very, very easy, and I'm going to show you some brilliant ways to do this. That way you'll look at this and laugh and say, give me something harder. But whenever you're looking at this problem, please note it is still non-calculator. So that means we have to know our integer rules. And also it's not multiple choice. So you're going to have to be able to master this equation enough to be confident enough to work it on your paper and then type in an answer. So once again, you would just type it like that. But just please keep in mind that this is what we are working towards, and you have to know equations. That's why we're doing it so early in the year. You have to know it well enough on the PARCC to where it's not multiple choice, that you can type in what your answer should be and be confident in that. So this does it. Next week you'll see I'll post some more videos that show how to actually work these kind of problems. But this should help you with your homework tonight or any other questions that you have pertaining to what we're doing this week in pre-algebra. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, come before school or at lunch.